So welcome everyone to our webinar today. Our speaker is Jon Sedey. He will be speaking about Path to the Utility Network. Just a little bit about Jon. He's currently the GIS Manager for Gewalt Hamilton Associates. He works on budgets, resource allocation, he does planning, and making sure that the GIS solutions are served across all of the divisions. He works with data acquisition, quality control, and security, making sure that all GIS data meets the highest standards of integrity and accuracy. Before coming to Gewalt Hamilton, Jon worked as a GIS consultant, focused on large-scale GIS enterprise system implements and utility network migrations. Jon has a Bachelor's of Urban Planning and Development from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, a GIS certificate from Elmhurst College, and a Drone Technology and Application certificate from Harper College. Jon is also an FAA Part 107 certified remote pilot. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you, Jon.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich, for the introduction. And thank you to all who are attending today to kind of hear and learn about our journey and our story to the utility network. Got a lot of items I'd like to cover in a short amount of time here. So what I want to talk about today is just what is the utility network. There may or may not be some people attending today who are familiar with it. There might be some who are currently involved in a migration or maybe never even heard of what the utility network is. Wanted to go over, the benefits of migrating to the utility network, why you would migrate there, and then kind of go over our path. Some of the planning, the preparation we've done, and then some of the intermediary steps to get us to deploy the utility network, right? When you enable, validate, and publish it, throughout the presentation, you'll see some images of some examples that we have currently deployed. We'll talk about some of the challenges and recommendations that we would have, and then just next steps for us at Gewalt Hamilton and with what we're doing with the utility network. So what is the utility network? So from Esri, a utility network is the foundation that users interact with when editing, maintaining, and managing utility networks for advanced modeling. So with the network, users, they can create, edit, update, and delete their existing data. They can identify associations. They can trace the flow of resources throughout the system, and they can plan and react for system outages. So some of the benefits of the utility network, it's the flexibility and the scalability of it. I have worked with networks with features as small as 30 to 40 valves up to over 1 million customers. So the range of the data management opportunities is pretty endless and unlimited with the utility network. It allows for real-world connectivity and modeling. It reduces map clutter. So we're all familiar with GIS experts with how much clutter can be located on a map, especially when it comes to utilities and kind of confined locations. The utility network has the capability and tools to model containment and associations to help better visualize and analyze your assets. The network models entire system components. So it models everything from a source to a sink within a network and everything in between. The networks have built-in data validation and system integrity checks. I'm a big fan of the out-of-the-box dirty area review. Those are automated error generations that the network generates for you when you break the rules within your database, as well as built-in network topology. There's advanced modeling capabilities. There's associations. You can associate features that are connected and both not connected within the network. There's a lot of tools for efficient editing workflows. Those range from attribute rules to allow for data integrity and data quality at the beginning of a edit session. There's editing templates where you can digitize, say, a service line and all the valves on a service line with a couple clicks. The other thing I really like about it too is just the enhanced user interface, the out-of-the-box symbology, and some of the style files that Esri uses really paints your utility system in a cleaner and, in my opinion, a better user interface. And also, it eliminates tech debt. One example of the tech debt that we see a lot of in our work is users having different systems of record for say, like a B-box. Like you'll have a B-box spreadsheet that one person will call as the master data set. You'll have another person who says that the water B-box book in the kind of the public works house is the system of record. But this kind of modeling allows to eliminate that kind of tech debt and then create a centralized location for all your utilities moving forward. So why would you invest the time, resources, and kind of the money into migrating to the utility network? The first thing I like to talk about and work with prospective clients is, do you have a compelling event? Is there something ongoing within your organization that might almost force your hand to migrate to the utility network? So for example, is that compelling event, are you transitioning systems? Are you still using ArcFM? Are you planning to integrate with some kind of asset management system in the future? Another reason why you might migrate to the utility network is to just stay current with the technology. We all know that Esri's technology moves faster than we all can keep up with. Another reason is you might want a new way and process to view and edit your assets in the field. Your business processes can be shifting, as well as your company growing. So the utility network allows for single user environments as well as multi-user environments to deploy the utility network to. So whatever your processes are, or however your company is growing and moving forward, could be a lot of reasons as to why you would want to migrate to the utility network. So now I'd kind of like to talk about what we have done to set ourselves up for success in deploying the utility network. So much like looking at a map or some kind of map of an uncharted territory or a place you're familiar with, you're going to need some guidance, and you're going to need some magnifying glasses to look deep into the details, because the granularity of the utility network is pretty intensive. So hopefully you can learn from some of our mistakes, learn from some of the things I've talked about today to just try to help your migration go a little bit smoother. So the first thing that we do is we spend a lot of time in planning and preparation. Understanding your project timeline, your scope, your schedule, and ultimately your budget too. All that is going to take into account how you deploy the utility network. I've been on projects for utility networks that have spanned almost 2 years, and I've also been on utility network projects that have that have been deployed within about 8 or 9 months or so. So it all really depends on kind of the size and scale of your organization, your time frame, and then ultimately how much you have to invest into this kind of process. The other thing we spend a lot of time on is the data investigation. Is your data ready to be migrated to the utility network? Are there gaps in your data? We spend a lot in addition to the planning, we do a lot of data investigation. We try to look at our existing data. How is it populated? Is it up to date? When was the last time someone reviewed it? Do you have, asset IDs? If you're integrating with an asset management system, having asset IDs is a critical component of that integration. So we spend a lot of time looking at the data and making sure it is ready to go to the utility network. Another thing we spend some time on is we review the data models that Esri provides. So Esri provides comprehensive data dictionaries with their solution deployments. So you can spend a lot of time just reviewing the data dictionary and a lot of the items kind of under the hood before you even start this migration. I also recommend that too, because the terminology is a lot different, right? Where you could be going from subtypes in your existing model to migrating to a data model with asset groups and asset types. And if you don't really understand what you're migrating to, it's going to make your migration that much more challenging. Along with reviewing the model, Esri does have some, ready to go solutions with pre-configured data to explore. So one of the things we also do when we're planning and prepping for a project is we review what Esri has deployed. There's all the solutions they have projects set up and configured where you can go in and you can test editing the data. You can test tracing. You can test publishing services from them. It gives you that opportunity to see what your organization's data could look like in the future state. And finally, the thing which is tough for a lot of the organizations we work with, is letting go of the past, right? A lot of people have that mindset of, if it's not broken, why, if it ain't broken, why fix it, kind of mentality. But through a lot of time, energy, and effort, I think the benefits outweigh the kind of that mindset of not letting go of what you currently have. So after we do our planning and preparation, this is where we spend the bulk of our time, right? This is your initial data migration. So here's where you're going to do your migration activities, kind of your data mapping, identifying your source data, where's it going into the target system. Again, I talked a little bit about identifying gaps. Are there opportunities right now to clean your data while you're mapping it out? To better implement the solution. This is also the opportunity to extend the utility network. So the utility network, it's just the out-of-the-box solution, but it will not include all your customized business processes within it. So if there's certain field collection activities that you have, those attributes will probably not be present in the utility network, and this gives you the opportunity to sit down and extend the database so you can field map to that during your migration workflow. And then, depending on your organization and, your staff and current workload, you work on the exact transformation loading of the data, the ETLs. You can use automation. You can Python script. You can use Model Builder. There's FME. So there's a lot of third-party softwares out there outside of kind of the Esri technologies that can help you migrate your data. And then you just iterate and refine. I think we probably go through 4 or 5 iterations of kind of the data mapping and data migration throughout an entire utility network migration, just to try to make it work great for our clients. So after your migration flow, what you do is you enable and you validate and you publish your services. So you've migrated your data and you're happy with it. What you do then is you enable the network. This gives you the opportunity to validate and review it. What are your dirty areas like? So what are your initial error counts? What do they look like? Do you need now have to spend additional time in updating some of the underlying rules? Do you have to update the junction rules or connectivity rules? This gives you now a kind of high level view of where a migration might have failed. So once you get to this point, you can update all of that. If you're happy with it, you can go ahead and you can start publishing services. You can create your maps. You can create your editing maps, your viewing maps. You can start using those. You can distribute them to your team. You can create web applications. And ultimately here too, you can start testing the trace capabilities. But really, once you get to kind of this point after you've migrated your data, you've enabled it, validated, and publish it, the recommendation that I have is you save what I'm calling your golden database, right? This is your asset package now. And this is going to be used as your framework for a kind of sandbox in the future. So once you have this database, you can use this to start implementing future changes. You can implement future rules. You can change how your data is configured, and you won't have to worry about breaking your existing deployment. And just some of the examples that we have worked with so far. So some of the videos you've kind of seen throughout the demonstration here. There's the Chicago Botanic Garden. So we currently have them set up in a single user environment. And what I mean by single user environment is just deployed in a file geodatabase. So there's really only one person working on that data at kind of any given time. But then we also have a couple other clients who are deployed in a multi-user environment or in an enterprise environment where we have multiple people kind of editing and interacting with the data on a day-to-day basis. So that includes Northfield Woods Sanitary District, and then the village of Round Lake Beach. We have a water, a stormwater, and a sanitary district deployed for them. So what were some of the challenges that we ran into during the migration? One of the things is that the migration can error out at any time. One of the big ones is when you go to enable the network topology. Out of the box, I think there's only 10,000 or so errors that will be allowed to be fully deployed. If you have more than that 10,000 threshold, the migration is going to error out, and you're going to have to almost start over and see how you can clean your data in the migration process. Within that, data quality, there's unforeseen problems, the garbage in, garbage out, age-old tale. There's bad schemas. Staffing, this is not a easy model or an easy database to understand. So depending on the staff you have in-house, there could be limited experience, there could be several years of experience, or there could be no experience. And then in terms of staffing is training. Do you have the time to train the staff if they don't have any experience? Do you have the time to train your users on how to edit the utility network in the future state? The other thing too, there's limited resources. There's limited, what I would call technical support documentation, especially when the network errors out during your migration. It's more than just the general 999 error that we're used to. And one of the other things that we ran into was having multiple utilities or multiple domain instances in a single enterprise geodatabase. So Esri does recommend a best practice that you have one utility and one utility network. And the rationale for that is, it's easier for management. It's easier to take the services and the data offline if you ever have to make updates or changes to it. Sorry. Sorry about that. But yeah, so we have learned that the best approach is just to deploy one instance of the utility network in a single enterprise database. And some of the recommendations that I have for you today, review your existing data and review your existing model. Are you really ready to take this kind of journey on to migrate to the utility network? This gives you an opportunity to identify the critical items, versus the bloat. Do you have fields that are important to your business processes today that are a must-have and non-negotiable versus an attribute that somebody requested 5 years ago and it hasn't been touched since then? I highly recommend study the model and test the solutions. So go out to, Esri's website, download, deploy the solutions, and start reading the documentation, start playing around with the pre-configured data, and try to see if you can visualize your organization's data in that model. The other thing I recommend is start small. If this is something you really want to do and something you want to take on, pick a sample size, a small area, maybe a small neighborhood, and see if you can just take that data and try to run through the migration steps. If you can't migrate the data with a small sample size, then your organization may not be ready based on the data quality you have today. I also recommend that you plan to invest a lot of time into the migration and to be patient. Like I said earlier, I've been on migrations that have lasted a couple years. I've also been on some migrations that have only been about 8 or 9 months long. So it just really kind of depends on what you're going towards. And then do as much in a single user deployment as possible. So I talked about having that golden asset package saved once you are able to validate and enable the network. Once you get to that point, the more you can configure and update and kind of modify will set you up for future success then to deploy that to an enterprise geodatabase instance. And then finally, just iterate. Just go through the process, kind of go through your migration routine once, kind of go through it twice. Just make sure that the end result looks great for you after you've come through it several times. So what's next for us? So within our current deployments, we are doing a lot of the review and the cleaning of the dirty areas. So we're reviewing stacked points. Stacked points break the network rules, so that will give you a dirty area in your utility network. We're working towards tracing. So once we clean our dirty areas, we should be able to fully trace the network. One thing we want to start looking into as well is deploying the utility network essentials, and that was just released with 11.3 earlier this year. And then we want to look towards mobile editing, so giving ourselves and our clients the ability to edit their assets in the field. So ultimately, the journey to the utility network migration, it's not easy. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but ultimately it's going to be something that empowers your users and empowers your organization, right? It gives you the ability to analyze, edit, visualize, model, and organize your data all within a centralized location. And that was so that's all I had for today. So Rich, I'll kind of stop sharing and then open it up for any questions that might have come in.
Yeah, John, could you do me a favor and go ahead and type in your contact information into the chat box so that in case people have questions, they can contact you?
Yes.
And folks, go ahead and please type your questions into the chat box now for John. While we're all typing our questions in, I just had a quick question for you, John. As I was listening to your presentation, I was thinking about data validation and data integrity. So how does the utility network handle that across the utility networks?
That's a great question, Rich. So the utility network, they actually have several out-of-the-box features and functionality that will actually validate and analyze kind of the data for you. So the first thing is network topology, right? So it has the connectivity between your assets. So every time you make an edit or you make a change to your utility network, you have the ability to validate your network topology, and that will tell you whether or not you've either created a dirty area or that the change you've made to your system is validated and it abides by all the network rules. There's attribute validation. So there's out of the box attribute rules. So for example, asset IDs, there's attribute rules within the system that will automatically calculate attribute IDs. So you don't have to sit there as an end user and manually think of the next incremental asset for your feature. There's the dirty area management. This is actually one of my favorites because it gives you a visual representation of where there's an issue with the data on your map. So you can quickly identify that dirty area and zoom to it, and then it gives you the opportunity to try to resolve it based on the error codes that are displayed within it. And then finally, the other thing I like too is the versioning. Right. So we talk about how the utility network is branched versions. So what that allows for, it allows for multiple users to be actually editing the same system in different locations at the same time. So this way, each user has their own version and they're not creating conflicts when they go ahead and reconcile to the database.
Thanks, John. From my perspective, like you said before, garbage in, garbage out, right? So I'm always interested, and I know all of our attendees and our listeners are always interested in the quality of the data and questioning the data. But it sounds like all this is really baked into what it is that you're doing in terms of data validation and data integrity. So that's great to hear.
No, it is. And that's one of the nice things about the utility network is that they've taken a lot of that legwork off of the end users and have essentially automated it.
Great. Not seeing any questions coming in just yet. So I will follow up with another one while people are thinking of questions to type in. I'm always interested in kind of what the next generation or the next future workforce is going to look like. So in working with the utility network, what would you say from your perspective and your experience of having worked with it, what might be some kinds of skills that would be best for those who could kind of hit the ground running here if they want to work with the utility network?
Great question. Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is actually looking at some of the ESRI trainings that are available. So there's instructor-led courses, there's free courses, there's a lot of information out within the kind of the My ESRI learning library that are specific towards the utility network. So if you don't know where to start, or if you're a little scared and don't know how to begin the journey, that would be my first recommendation, is just to go out to ESRI and start looking at some of their free training. In addition to that, just ArcGIS Pro and just some fundamental GIS skills would be very valuable if you're looking to migrate to the utility network. ArcGIS Pro does have a new interface. It's completely different than ArcMap, but especially when you get towards the utility network, there's going to be new ribbons that you have to familiarize yourself with. There's going to be new tools, new toolboxes, and just having an understanding of how to navigate Pro to access and open all those tools would really go a long way. And then finally, just troubleshooting, problem-solving skills. As I said earlier, your migration can error out at any time as you start enabling and validating your network. And I have noticed there's not a lot of documentation to help support those errors. So you really have to have some good intuitive skills to try and figure out where you can find answers to your problems.
Great. Thank you, John. I'm not seeing any questions coming in here at this point, so I just want to thank you very much for your presentation on the utility networks and ask everyone to save the date on your calendar for next month when we have our next ILGISA webinar on the second Wednesday of every month. And we'll have Brad Brewer next time, who will be presenting for us for our last webinar of 2024. Thank you again, everyone. And thank you, John, and enjoy your day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.